So, how dangerous is it really to fly small airplanes? That was the question that I had, and it was the subject of a video I made on my YouTube channel, which is right here. This is the video I made, My Fear of Flying Small Planes. And since I made that video, a fantastic resource has been created that's helping me to answer my question. And that resource came from a guy named Dan Gryder. And it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Dan Gryder's. I think he is super smart, super funny. He's a great musician, but more importantly, I'm a fan of what he's trying to do to reduce the fatal accident rate in general aviation. I think that's an amazing work that he's doing, and I'm happy to do anything I can do to help. And in fact, I volunteered to help him with his new website that he's making. And I'll show you that website in a minute. But I'm working on the front end of the website, and a guy named John is working on the back end. Let me show you John. This is John. He's got a website called Trinity Aviation Solutions, and he's doing the heavy lifting of the data site that Dan is creating. I've been looking at Dan's data to try to figure out the answer to my question, how dangerous is it for me to get back into flying as a rusty pilot? Just FYI, I've got about 100 hours, and it's been about 12 years since I've flown, and I'm just about to get started flying again. I found a flight instructor, and I've been working with him and another guy who I'll tell you about, both of those guys, on my other project, which I'm going to tell you about in an upcoming video. Anyway, I've been looking at Dan's site to try to help me understand what risks I have in starting to fly again. And watching Dan's weekly show about the accidents and other YouTube videos about small planes crashing and bursting into flames, and it's pretty gruesome sometimes. So, that's what I was talking about in my other video. But I started thinking about what Dan says when he says pick one. And he brings this picture up quite often in his Sunday night show. He'll say, pick one: night, IMC, terrain, or ice. And in many cases, pick none. So I thought about that, and I thought how that relates to personal minimums, and it relates to good ADM, aeronautical decision making. And I thought, you know what? Maybe I can mitigate my risks before I even get in an airplane, and that ties into aeronautical decision making. So I thought I'd take a look at Dan's data and his list of ways that pilots are killing themselves. And Dan always says they're not inventing any new ways to kill themselves. Let's look at Dan's site. So let me just show you the whole thing. So here's the front end website that I'm working on. And while you come here, it's at theDTSB.org to get here to this page. And this is the home button right here. And if you want to see Dan, where Dan's going to be speaking live in person, you can click on this events button, and this tells you where he's going to be speaking next and how to get a hold of whatever organization has invited him to see if you can get in, have a ticket or whatever to go see Dan live. But when you get to the DTSB.org to see the data set, just click this black button right here. Just click that, and that takes you to the homepage of the dataset site. And there's some menu items up here. There's accidents, which shows a map of all the accidents that are in this database so far. There's 157 as I'm making this video, and they're listed here, I think, in reverse order. But then there's also the dataset sort, which gives you amazing capabilities of finding exactly what you're interested in. You can choose any of these categories to search for what interests you. But what I want to talk about and show you first is this AQP. This is the list of all the things, all the categories of how pilots are killing themselves. There's two basic categories: controls still working at impact, and then, of course, controls not working at impact. So these are all the different ways that you can kill yourself in an airplane. And these are the categories that Dan is assigning to all of the different accident reports that he's put into the data set. What I did was I went to the accidents and I looked at filter by AQP classification, and I noticed that there's a number next to the classification, and it's sorted in descending order by the number of accidents. So loss of speed awareness 24, accidents, mishandled abnormal 22, terrain collision 18, rejected takeoff 11, and so on. What I did was I took all of this information and I put it into a spreadsheet for my own self. So here is my spreadsheet, and I put in these different categories, and what I did was I said, is it possible for me to have this problem? Yes or no? Some of them, the answer is no, because of my personal minimums and picking one. So I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm not going to fly a plane into a thunderstorm and break up my airplane or do something stupid. I'm not going to run out of gas. I'm not an air show person. I will never do the impossible turn. I'm not going to be flying Cessnas that have bad seat rails. I'm not going to fly in ice. I'm not going to be flying a twin. I'm not going to be doing any buzzing or acrobatics. I'm not going to intentionally fly into bad weather, and I'm not going to be flying at night. So all of these I can just eliminate from the possibilities, from my possibilities, because of my personal minimums, my aeronautical decision making, and picking one or picking none. In my case, I live in Utah, so terrain's always an issue. Me picking one is terrain, and none of the other ones are in my realm of possibility. Then I looked at how many flight hours there are per year, the average hours per year. I came up with 7,784,000. Where did I get that? I got that from the FAA. This is the FAA's spreadsheet that I pulled off of their website. And for personal flying, here's the numbers of hours flown in thousands. So this is 8,372,000 in 2023. So what I did was I just highlighted all of these, and I got the average down here of 7,784. That's 7,784,000. So I know I'm getting down into the weeds, but I'm just doing some analysis to figure out what my risks are and if I can mitigate that. So I figured out that for this type of accident, loss of speed awareness, there were 24 accidents in the year 2024 and the first half of January, which is when I'm making this video, and of an average of 7,784,000 flight hours per year for personal use. That makes 0.31 accidents of this type per 100,000 flight hours. So basically, bottom line, I'm figuring out that if I mitigate my risk by eliminating some of the possibilities and look at what really is going on, yes, flying is dangerous, but it also depends on what you're willing to do or what you're not willing to do. So I'm still analyzing my numbers and still trying to figure out what my risks are for the different possible ways that people kill themselves in airplanes. But bottom line is I feel a lot more comfortable embarking on my journey to go from rusty pilot to active pilot. And I would like to invite you and recommend to you to check out Dan's website, both his front end to see where he's speaking and go see him live, and if it's near you or if you want to fly in there. Or I especially want to invite you and encourage you to go to his data site and just check it out. Look at all the different categories that interest you and just check out what Dan has said. Another thing that is really interesting in Dan's data site is if you go to the accidents and you click on one, you can just see what Dan had to say about it, which is always really interesting because his Sunday night videos, he takes them down after a week, but this stuff remains. So Dan's recommendations are here in the data set. So even though the videos are gone, the Dan's recommendations are still here. So check out his website and fly safe.